Okay, my loves, about 10 minutes past. Let's get started today. So I'm so happy and excited to welcome you to the Sound Sensitivity Masterclass. I've spent a long time working on this and building, and I haven't done a masterclass on sound stuff for a long time. It's one of my favorite topics, and that's because it's really close to my heart. So if you have a dog who barks at every sound or really struggles with specific sounds, you're in the right place. If your dog was like mine, Hera, the poodle that you see here, and he struggles to relax or they struggle to relax, you're in the right place. If your dog is sound sensitive, they're likely maybe hypervigilant. That can even in and of itself be a problem. And for me and my dog, we started our journey with him barking 50 times a day in the house at noises and literally peeing himself when he was scared of stuff out and about on the street in New York City when we were living there. So if you're frustrated, if you're stressed by your dog's sound sensitivity, I get it. I was there too, and I'm excited that you're here because, like I said, this is a big, big topic for me. Sounds were one of the biggest challenges that I think Hera struggled with, and still can, but so much less. Uh, he's 7 years old now. And when I started working, I had no idea how to help dogs like this. I was just doing kind of normal training and stuff like that. And for dogs like Hera, for dogs who really struggle with certain noises, the normal things that you see on the internet sometimes don't work. And often people come to me saying, like, I've tried this, I've tried this, I've tried this. And so if you're there, I'm excited because that's kind of where we specialize at CCA, Calm Canine Academy. If you haven't heard of us, you should definitely check out our Instagram, our YouTube channel. We have a webinar library. We are a group of dog training and professional dog trainers and behavior consultants who specialize with quote unquote challenging dogs, dogs who have seen multiple other trainers, dogs who have behavior challenges like issues with noises, sounds, sorry, noises, places, people, dogs, separation, those sorts of triggers, often multiple or all of those triggers. And we're a group now international. We have trainers in 4 or 5 different countries, and we've worked with over 6,000 clients in 16 countries on this with this kind of challenge and these kind of challenges. It's fair to say that we specialize in challenging dogs, and more than training, we are helping animals heal, our dogs, but also the humans as well, because there's a lot of stress that comes with raising a dog that has these challenges, in some cases, not in all. But also, in order to create healing and essentially provide therapy for these dogs, we need to work on our side of things as well. And so I'm going to talk to you today about our process. And if you've never met me before properly, I'm so happy to have you here. We've got a small group, so it's exciting. My name is Krishma War. I am head of training at CCA. I'm founder of CCA, and I have various different qualifications over my 8-year career working with sensitive dogs. I think the most important things to mention, maybe more so than the qualifications, etc., are the patterns that I see in the thousands of dogs that my team have worked with. That's where I think I have a unique insight. 16 countries and 6,000 cases. Those are just the logged ones, and we've been working our asses off over the last 5 years, especially over the pandemic when everything went online and we really got this insight. And today I'm going to talk to you through in kind of 2 stages what I think is really important for you to know if your dog struggles with noises. We're going to start off understanding sound sensitivity, and then we're going to talk about healing sound sensitivity. And before I go on and we dive in, I just have to remind everybody that this isn't actually training advice for anybody specifically. Anything I say today is just general advice. And you will even see some warnings on the screen like, do not attempt this at home, or this could make things worse if implied incorrectly. I would take that seriously as someone who DIY'd a training plan for a quite serious dog, which is my Hera, this guy here. I do want to say that this is intending to give you like ideas of where to go, but make sure that you do lots of research and get help if you need help. All right, so let's start off with the kind of general understanding of sound sensitivity and like, what is it to start off with? It's an overreaction to everyday noises is what we would call it. This is very, very vague because sound sensitivity comes in so many different forms. So if you're here, let me know in the chat, what sort of things do your dogs react to? What noises and what are the antecedents or the triggers that trigger your dog's sensitivities? They are far and wide ranging, from motor noises, thunder, beeping, clattering, noises around the house. Someone's got the gate closing, which I think is a great one. So we might have any noise around the perimeter of the property that might be kind of a trigger for your dogs. There might be triggers related to other things, like the rustle of a squirrel in a bush or the voice of a man approaching the door. And I want you to think, what are the triggers? Literally write them down is one of the things that we do. Chloe's mentioned a great one here. Sometimes noises I can't even hear. Brilliant. Sometimes noises that are so quiet or far away, they're imperceptible to you, or maybe they weren't even existing. Maybe your dog is startling literally at nothing, like a breath or a pin drop or something like that. So I love this, writing down all the different triggers that your dogs might react to with noises. And then further on from that, we have the function. Whenever we have dogs performing behaviors and they come to us to work with us, we have to figure out the why. And we ask the question, WTF, what's the function? Why is it that your dog, why is it that your dog is barking or freezing or whatever it is that they're doing? If we have the antecedents, we can think about the behaviors themselves, right? So some people are saying that their dogs are barking. Others are saying that actually it's not really barking, it's more of like a startle. And I've had dogs who will attack another dog if they hear a noise, or attack the guardian, or injure themselves. I've seen dogs who just shake or pee themselves. There's a huge variety of behaviors. So we have the triggers or the antecedents, and then we have the behaviors, and you might have different behaviors in response to different scenarios. Our dogs are complicated creatures, right? That's why you like them. If they were too simple, it would be boring. So when we look at the antecedents and we look at the behaviors, we can think, what might the function be? WTF of what's going on here, right? And there are many different functions. One could be just reflexive stress release. If someone startles me, sometimes I go, ah, and I'm not like trying to do anything. It's a nervous system response or a reflex. It could be a reflex. They could be trying to get the scary thing to go away. So when people come to my house, well, not anymore, but they used to, when people come to my house, my lovely, beautiful poodle would make a big scary show, and then they'd go away and they'd drop their package off and they'd leave. And I could just tell him going, okay, whew, good thing I did that and got them to go away. That was a close one there, wasn't it? Like the function was quite clear for him. It was get them to go away. And he did that even when there was no one in the house. He would tell people, bugger off now, don't even think about it. My Shih Tzu, Obi, he sometimes barks at the noises outside of people. He is not scared of people. He freaking loves people. He's like, get in here, Mom, quick, Krishna, have you seen there's someone there? Quick. What is the function for Obi? He's like, get them in. I want to say hi, open the door. Completely different functions, right? Here is repelling, Obi's is attracting. And it's super important to understand for your dog exactly what's going on. Understanding the details around their sensitivities is key, right? So we also have to look at the other behavior challenges, because sound sensitivity rarely exists in a vacuum. Hira, my poodle, has issues with people, dogs. He's got issues with everything. So it makes sense that maybe his sound sensitivity is because the sounds predict another stimulus that stress him out. People around the house predict intruders. Dogs barking, jingly tags predict being run up to off leash. It kind of makes sense. In my programs and our trainers with our clients, we call that sound sensitivity. The dogs are sensitive to noises. They have been sensitized to noises because of their potentially other behavior challenges, right? There's another kind of presentation of sound sensitivity, which kind of doesn't make much sense. And it's more of what we would call a phobia. So Hira, very sound sensitive. Obi, very phobic. At his worst, Obi was scared not only of fireworks and like thunderstorms where he would shake and pant and be inconsolable for hours. He developed shaking, trembling responses to me putting a cup down on the table, to me clicking a pen lid, to high-pitched beeping noises, my phone dinging would cause him not just to react, to start physically shaking and hiding and cowering. And there is two different presentations that I often do kind of differentiate between. And one is this sensitivity, which makes sense given their wider behaviors, likes, dislikes, fears. And then there's phobia. Obi is a happy-go-lucky little dog. He is so confident. He loves people. He loves dogs. He loves exploring. But for some reason, as he started to reach 4 years old, he started to become phobic of certain noises, and this thunderstorms and flies and these sorts of other things decided to develop. So I want you to bear this in mind. We're looking at what are the triggers, we're looking at what are the behaviors, and then we're thinking about what the functions might be. And are we seeing a sensitivity that makes sense, or are we seeing a phobia of particular triggers? Does that phobia versus sensitivity thing make sense to people? And does anybody maybe understand what side they sit on? Slash, you could kind of have both at the same time. I'm not gonna lie. Like you can have, like, Obi was phobic of certain noises, but he was sensitive to the doorbell, and he would bark and rush around, but because he was excited and overexcited about that and couldn't handle the frustration. Both. Okay, cool, Alina, but maybe we can actually differentiate between the two now, because super useful to pick it apart. And folks often come to us when they work with us. We work fully virtually, and our job is to become detectives around your dogs, to kind of really dig into these details. And sometimes people are like, they're reactive to everything. Like that's what my parents said to me when Obi was at his worst. He was living with them as he kind of degraded, and then I brought him to me to do some work and help him. And I was saying to them, what is it that he reacts to? And they were like, everything. And I was like, okay. And it took me a few weeks to kind of tease it apart a little bit. I was like, okay, so he seems to have violent phobic reactions to these noises, which make no sense. And then he seems to have sensitivity to these noises, which kind of makes sense, and kind of have make sense in some way. Great, Sonia. So you're really differentiating. We're seeing a few folks saying, yeah, phobic to certain noises. And it's interesting that we see phobias coming up around specific types of noises. Isn't that weird? Like, and that's just like a kind of a trend that we've seen around the world. So phobias tend to be thunderstorms, fireworks, but also high-pitched beeping noises, flies buzzing, like cracking, popping noises. Very, very bizarre. And I'll go into a little bit why in the next sort of slide, because I think that's the next big question people have. Like my parents asked me this: why is he like this? Like, why is he so stressed by every single thing? Like, what is it that's wrong? And people have asked it about Hira many times, like what went on with him? Did he have a horrible past? Like, what is it that's happened? And it's more complicated than that. And I think we want one answer, like, why did this happen? Because of this. That's actually not really how behavior works. It's a nature plus nurture sort of situation. And at CCA, we've actually expanded even more on this framework to build this thing we call the HEAL framework, and it outlines 4 areas that affect behavior and wellness. So the framework is used to explain and understand behavior, but also to create behavior plans for our dogs. And so I'm just going to give you a little snapshot using the HEAL framework and the 4 kind of quadrants that we work on at CCA. An explanation of the whys behind sound sensitivity / phobia. I'm using sound sensitive as like a catch-all, if that makes sense, but you can understand that there is this kind of slight difference between the two. Health, exposure, activity, and learning. This HEAL framework is a foundation that we use at CCA to make sure that everybody has holistic training plans. The reality of behavior change with sensitive dogs is that it's not like do this, this, and this. And I see folks who have seen 4 trainers, 5 trainers, and each time they've tried something or some things, but it's never quite been the right combination of things at the right time, implemented in the right way. And so if you want more information on the HEAL framework, we have like a 2-hour webinar all about that. I'll send you the link in the follow-up email. You can learn more. But in general, we look at health. So our dogs who are sound sensitive are much more likely to have undiagnosed medical issues. Dogs who are sound phobic I would bet my next paycheck that there's something going on physically with those dogs. I would literally bet my next paycheck. I would get my money back in return in masses. I would. It would be a great strategy for me because we're always, almost always finding something in these with these dogs. That can be such a challenge in and of itself. But we're looking at things like untreated medical conditions, essentially, that most folks don't even know are a challenge. We might also be seeing chronic anxiety or trauma that has gone untreated. And trauma doesn't have to be like this big, scary, intense experience. There are lots of everyday events that can be traumatic for little creatures, especially little creatures in captivity who are in, a human environment that's difficult to understand. And people always say to me, but you got Hira from really young. You got Hira at 4.5 months, like, and you raised him that whole time. And I was like, yeah, well, 4.5 months of the most important months is enough to get us really off on the wrong track. And then let's not lie, I made every mistake that I could. Like, let's just be honest. Like, he was my first dog. I made every mistake that I could. He was not the dog who could handle that. He was not the dog well equipped to be the firstborn. And I say that as a firstborn immigrant child. So like, it's a tough one. It's hard. Like you shoulder a lot of the mistakes of the learning process, and that's not anyone's fault. It happens, but it's part of why we're here, right? And his genetics played a big part as well. We'll also, like, in general with health, it's something that we'll talk more about as we go through the webinar. So just hang tight for a moment. The next area that we look into is exposure. Many sound sensitive dogs live in environments that are overwhelming to them. And that might not sound overwhelming to us. Like, we might be like, but I just live in a normal house in like a semi-quiet neighborhood. But our dogs have been bred for many, many years, in some cases, to be vigilant to noises. And so when we live in even suburban environments where we're fence to fence with dogs and kids and people, it can be really stressful for them, let alone if you're like many of our clients in apartment buildings, in flats. That's when things can get really, really challenging. So someone's saying we have fireworks every night courtesy of SeaWorld. Oh my goodness, I had a client who lived next to a field where a cannon went off multiple times a day, just random cannons. And it's exactly that kind of stuff, those sorts of environments that can lead to dogs becoming sensitized, especially during puppyhood or adolescence, or after they've had surgery, like spay-neuter surgery. That's often when we see these things coming up. And it's not just sound triggers that we have to contend with. The other triggers, like people, dogs, etc., all can contribute to this stress cycle that then makes that sound sensitivity so much worse. Yes, Mayuka's saying so difficult living in a building. So when I lived with Hira in the first few years of his life, we lived in an ground floor apartment building, like a pre-war Brooklyn apartment building. We were on the ground floor right by the front door, and every time someone came into the building, they like slammed the door into my door. And it pretty much led to him barking like 50 times a day. He'd be fast asleep and he'd wake up, and then on top of that, we leave the house and there's construction, trucks, kids, people, everything everywhere. So it was kind of bombarded. And I'm autistic, so at the time when I first got here, I didn't know that, but it became apparent to me as well because I was trigger stacked. There was too much noise for me, there was too much noise for him, and it became really challenging moving into this activity section. It became really challenging to meet his needs. That's it, full stop. Meet his needs. It was hard to get him exercise because he was scared of everything and overwhelmed by everything. It was hard to get him sleep because our dogs need to sleep like 16 plus hours a day. He was not even a little bit sleeping that much because he was constantly worrying about the front door and the windows. I was so busy, and part of this is structural, right? Like, I didn't have a good job at the time. I didn't have security, so I was working so much that I was rushing him out, quickly playing with him, with a frisbee or a ball, and then rushing him back to the house. Everything was just a little bit too much. Emma's saying Arlo needs to live in a large forest, no dogs, no people except me. Literally, that's where me and Hiro were at his worst as well. And what that usually means is that we are so in a cycle, essentially, of things being really, really challenging, often because of this environmental factor. There's a health factor, and then there's this environmental factor that plays such a huge, huge role. There is also learning that sits atop the health exposure and activity. And so lots of our dogs literally just rehearse this a lot, like literally just practice it a lot. So Obi, for example, the little Shih Tzu, became sound sensitive because a lot of the times he would just be left in the yard by my parents when they were busy, and he would just spend all day chasing birds. And so he became super sensitive to birds and anything around the edge of the property, because that was kind of his main job all day. That's what he did. And he practiced it so much that it became such an intense reaction, like so fluent his reaction was. Like, it was kind of incredible to see. I actually, to be perfectly honest with you guys, Obi broke his own leg chasing a bird. That's how intense he was at his worst around this. He was so enraged. I don't know what the emotion was that he was feeling, whatever it was so big that he flung himself at that bird so much that he broke his own leg. And it's not something that's unheard of. We hear about this quite a lot. Of course, trauma and also a history of being punished can increase sensitivity. So we see dogs who have, maybe people have been given advice when the dogs bark, we correct them in some way to try and punish the behavior. We can see dogs actually associating the punishment with the sounds, and then that makes it worse in the long run. So that can be a thing that happens as well. And we usually do find that, like, when you try to suppress it, it kind of comes out in other ways. So that is something that we can see. I wonder if anyone can look at this and go, okay, I can see how a few of these might contribute. And the challenge that I see with so many people trying to address complex behaviors with dogs is the simplification of things. All of this interacts together and more to create sound sensitive dogs. And it creates this stress cycle where we have dogs who react to triggers in the environment. They then become super hypervigilant, really dysregulated. We can then find it really hard to meet their needs. And when we don't meet their needs, guess what? They get hella more dysregulated, right? When you don't go to the gym, when you don't have time with your friends, when you don't get your rest. I'm a freaking bitch, man. So, like, it's hard. If you don't get what you need, they might become even more sensitive, and then their trigger sensitivity increases, and it's just this cycle. And when someone was saying, he needs to be in the middle of the woods with no one for miles around, I was like, oh yeah, I feel that. I really, really feel where you're at with that. I think that it's underestimated how challenging it can be sometimes living with our dogs who struggle. It can be challenging, like, financially, energetically. They often need a lot more. We often have to go really out of our way to meet their needs. Plus, we have to deal with their dysregulation, co-regulate. We have to regulate ourselves for them, which it can be really challenging. But I think the most important thing that I've found over the last 8 years is that our dogs have this incredible capacity for healing. So do we. Both of us do, together especially. And we need to provide treatment plans. And I think of these treatment plans essentially like removing the blocks that need to be removed for the healing to happen by itself. Because our bodies and our dogs' bodies want to return back to a comfortable neutral, but there are things in the way that are stopping them. And so I want to talk next a little bit about how that works, about how we might heal our dogs from sound sensitivity, remembering that, I can't go into everything, so this is like a whistle-stop tour. I have some videos that I want to show you guys as well, because I think it's always useful to get some visuals on this. And I'm going to be still sticking to this idea of the HEAL framework a little bit to kind of help guide us through, because the reality with sound sensitivity training and any training or therapy for behavior challenges is the treatment plan is individual for each dog. And what was it one of my trainers said? They were like, yeah, they were saying it's like a cocktail. So you can put like a shot of this, shot of that, a little bit of this, muddle it up, shake it up, shake it up. Every dog will have a slightly different plan. And I'll take you through some of the kind of main things, and maybe have a little write down what you think might be applicable to you, or any areas that you want to learn more about, because I'm going to send you some follow-up resources. Okay, so I think what I kind of am getting at with this cocktail analogy is that, folks often say to me, like, what should I do when my dog barks? How do I train them not to bark at noises? And I'm like, it's not really about training them not to bark at noises. It's about creating comfort around the noises and the sounds integratively and figuring out what it is that's going on in all of the different areas. We can't just look at learning and be like, how do I teach them to not bark? We have to look at meeting their needs, at the exposure, at the health areas. And so we'll go through that a little bit. The first area that we're going to think about is this exposure and exposure management area. And it starts with breaking that stress cycle a little bit. So if you have dogs that struggle in the home, the first thing that we often do is try to create a safe space in the home. If they can't rest in the home, we are gonna struggle. And so often with our clients, they're coming into us and they're like, they're barking a million times a day. They can't reacting at everything outside. What do we do? Where do we start? And I'm like, we start in the home. We start trying to get them less reactive in the home with environmental management. Changing the setup of the house so that we can reduce how much noise they're hearing. So we put often barriers of sound. So I've got white noise here, but often it's more than that. It's often a few different layers of noises, maybe by the windows or by the doors. Wherever the area is that your dogs are hearing the noises from, we often want to create like a sound barrier to minimize that. Maybe we only turn them on during certain times of the day, like in the evening, for example, or after they've reacted to, if they're like a little bit stressed. It doesn't have to be constantly. But where your dog's hanging out most of the day, we want that to not be right by the noisiest part. If Hira had his choice, he would sit by the front door all day waiting. He'd be like, boop, 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 boop. And if Obi had his choice, he'd sit outside in the yard waiting for pigeons and squirrels to bark at. We can't be letting that happen. If they're watching out of windows, if they're like, if they like to spend their hours lounging in the yard, but then they're like going off every now and again at birds, we might have to be like to them, listen, you can't be doing that. You got to think about it like smoking. We got to quit smoking. You know, if I was to try and quit smoking and I went to like a bar and I got a bit tipsy and then I had a cigarette and I came home and I did that every now and again, you wouldn't be like, okay, cool. You'd be like, you're not quitting smoking. You got to actually quit to quit. Like every time you start, like it makes it much more likely for you to continue. So sometimes we have to not go to bars. Like when I quit smoking after 13 years, I had to stop drinking coffee for a while because I'd always smoke and drink coffee. And that change in the environment can help you change your behavior. So sometimes we're confining the dogs away from the windows. When I lived in Brooklyn, guys, I literally created Hira in the bathroom a few times a day for like an hour so that he could sleep. And I'd play him noises and like Netflix and stuff in the bathroom so he could have a nap. And it wasn't because I like wanted him to be in a box. It was because if he didn't, he couldn't sleep. And then, of course, you know, if you have sounds that are triggering outside of the home, you also have to make accommodations to those. And that can be really challenging. Sometimes it means not walking in certain places or all sorts of other things. And I have a longer webinar, 1 hour, all about managing reactivity in the home and out of the home. I've linked it in the slides. I'll pop it in the email as well when I send that to you guys, so you can find all of that information. But breaking that stress cycle is really, really important, I think, honestly. Very, very, very important that we keep everyone safe and that we make sure that we are reducing their ability to rehearse unwanted behaviors as much as possible. Sometimes we start off with dogs who are barking like 50 times a day. We get it down to like 5 or like 4. And I'm like, okay, cool, that's good. That's a little bit better. We're really trying to get it down almost all the way to 1 or 0, but it's okay if we can't always do that straight away. That's all right. Yes, Alina's saying window film on all of your windows has helped. Yes, window film is like this thing you can put up on your windows that means that they can't see out, but the light can still come in. So useful for window watchers. I think it's important to remember this is not forever. A lot of these accommodations that we're making for our dogs who are sensitive, they are in place while we work on these other things. But there will be reactions. Your dogs will react to things. It happens. It happens. You can't ever stop that from happening. And people always ask, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? It really depends. But I'm going to give you a kind of general avoids and try these instead. So definitely avoid punishing or intimidating. And I have to say, I have definitely been like, shut up. Like I have. We've all been there. No shame ever for anyone who has sensory overwhelm, just experiencing a little bit of a moment of a wobble. It's normal. I just want you to know it's not going to work, because that helps, right? Just knowing that it's not going to work, applying corrections, applying punishments is not going to work. I see people sometimes, their dogs are like really reacting at a noise and they're going quiet or look or place or down or something like that. They're trying to give them a different cue or command to help them do a different behavior. But if I'm having a panic attack and someone's like, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, like that doesn't actually help. Right? Often you need other ways of regulating. Often it's not being told what to do, because that can actually make things more stressful for them. And if you've ever had your dog, I did this with Hira, he would listen to it, he would bark at a noise and I'd be like, go to your bed. And then he'd go to his bed and he'd eat the food, but he'd be like looking over and eating, but also barking. We're making it worse. We're making it worse. We're making it worse. There are times where we shouldn't be talking about our feelings, you know, and immediately after being triggered, like if I go for like Christmas dinner with my family and they say like things that trigger me, if my therapist was like, tell me about that, in the moment I'd be like, get away from me. I can't talk about this now. I need to just go walk around, need to take a minute, right? So sometimes we don't actually need to talk to them about the trigger in that moment, but we also don't want to ignore them or do nothing, because that's not going to help. Ignoring the behavior is not going to make it go away, because often the function is something else. The function is it's being met regardless of whether you ignore them or not, right? So instead we think a little bit about regulating ourselves. So if my dogs are barking, often I'll like take a deep breath, I'll do something to just be like take a beat for myself. I then move them away from the noise. Whatever the scary noise is, I try to move them away from the noise. I try to shield them from the noise. So say, for example, I'm hanging out in the living room and someone knocks at the door. I usually will get up and move my dogs away. Come on, let's go. If dogs can't move with you, that's when we keep leashes on them so that we can move them away. I usually take them into a back room, or if I'm on the street, away from the noise, put something in between them and the noise. Teaching them to move away is key. And while I'm moving away, I usually acknowledge to some degree what happened. Thank you, I heard it. Yep, that was someone outside. Yep, that's good. Thank you very much. We're going to go away, whatever it is you want to say. And then I actually reinforce my dogs. Sometimes I'm in the bedroom and they might even still bark, and I will give them food. I will go find it, find it, find it. Or I'll like put a scatter of food on like a mat or in a corner or something like that. If they can't eat or they're not interested in eating, I might offer them something else to soothe themselves, a chew, or I can do petting and massage, can be amazing for dogs who are sound sensitive. Often they just really will need you to acknowledge what's going on. I do not worry about reinforcing their fear or their frustration or whatever the emotion is. I don't worry about reinforcing that. You can't reinforce emotions. You can only reinforce behaviors. And it feels like if they bark and then you ask them to move away and you give them food, it feels like you're saying good job for barking, and you kind of are. You're saying good job for barking and then stopping. And now can you calm down over here with me? That's kind of the general trend. So if you've ever heard of the thank you for barking, you can put that in Google, thank you for barking. There's a great article by a trainer called Kiki Yablon that explains this in a little bit more depth. But the general idea is we need to be attuned. We need to jump in to help them. More often than not, they need to move away immediately from the trigger. We don't want to suspend them close to the trigger, talking to them about it. Move them away and help them calm down and down regulate. And you can learn a lot more about this in this webinar, which is free. So please do check it out. Emma, you're so right about having two dogs barking for different reasons, but the other one joins in. Yes, if we go back to the why are dogs sound sensitive, learning history is one of the reasons. And if you have a multi-dog household, socially facilitated learning can mean that your dogs learn from the other dog to kind of react to things. So when sweet little Obi moved into my house, he was barking at all the noises. Guess who started barking at noises again? Our Hera, who hasn't barked at noises in a long time. So it's not unusual to see that happening as well. Good. And at the times when it's happening, Obi's barking at whatever's outside. Usually it's a squirrel or a pigeon, because that was his big trigger. And he's frustrated. He's like, let me at that. And then Hera's going, buff, 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 we're panicking. Why are we panicking? He doesn't even know what he's barking at. It's ridiculous behavior. So it's not unusual, though, to see that. Now, at this point, lots of folks say to me, oh, yeah, Marie's saying that it's already been helpful. Brilliant, Marie. Yes, that gives people the impetus to go out and have a little look at it, because it can be a really useful intervention. But at this point, often people say to me, like, okay, well, what if the noise is not going to go away? What if it's a thunderstorm that's coming through? What if it's, these things that you can't just move away from it? What if it's kind of constant? And that brings us to the H of the heal, to the health area, because anxiety medications are often very important for sound sensitive dogs. We talked about that cycle. It's hard to get out of that cycle. You're not going to move into a forest in the middle of nowhere, are you? Because if you are, great. But if you're not, we might need to think about other ways that we can help them manage their stress. We have this analogy at CCA called the stress sink. And when triggers go in the sink, it's like water going in the sink when your dog hears triggers or sees triggers. And as that sink fills up, they get more and more stressed and it overflows. That's them probably reacting, having a big reaction in some way. A noisy apartment or a noisy house is like a sink that's been left on. And one of the only ways that we can help drain that sink is by using anxiety medications. Anxiety medications make it easier for that water to flow, to almost like it increases the size of the sink almost. It makes them have a larger capacity when you find the right medication that works for them. And so when we have sound sensitive dogs, especially in the city, if we're seeing them struggling to sleep, if we're seeing them going from 0 to 100, if we're seeing them having multiple different challenges like Hera, sounds, people, dogs, vehicles, busy places, grooming, prey, bingo, that's when we're really thinking, we need to be thinking about anxiety meds. Phobias as well also can be really stressful and challenging. And I have another little free webinar for you guys here about when training is not enough and when we start to think, okay, actually, we need to speak to a vet and work on this with a vet. And alongside stress management, we have health complications. So dogs who are sound sensitive are highly likely to have these issues. Dogs that are phobic, like I said, so likelihood is so high. So Obi, I was convinced there was something going on with him, convinced. As his sound sensitivity started to develop, he started to become phobic of flies. He started to really panic at any noise. It like the phobia of the thunderstorms and the fireworks were such traumatic events for him that for weeks afterwards, he would be affected. He showed other things like just generally dysregulated nervous system, like really quick to shake, really quick to pant. People just called him a dramatic little dog, but I was like, there's something going on with him. And we ended up finding that he had a grade 3 luxating patellas, which means wobbly kneecaps that were basically dislocating. And we were able to resolve that. And then we did a pain trial, which is something that we can do if we're unsure of if the dog's experiencing pain. After the surgery, we did a pain trial where we put him on gabapentin for 4 weeks. And the surgery itself didn't seem to resolve the pain because it seems like his pain had become chronic. But when we put him on the gabapentin, after about 2 weeks on the gabapentin, almost all of his sound phobic behaviors went away. His sensitive behaviors remained. His sound sensitivity was still around because that was something related to experience. But the phobia was actually physical. It wasn't necessarily a behavioral thing. And when we went on the gabapentin, all of that melted away. The other week, I did a live on Instagram. You can go and watch it. And there is a thunderstorm in the live. And Obi sits on my lap for 45 minutes while this thunderstorm happens. And he only starts panting and shaking in the last 5 minutes. It's not perfect, but he would have been inconsolable for hours just a few months ago. So pain trials and identifying what is going on with the dog, sometimes you need actually help figuring out what's going on with the dog. And that's kind of often where we step in. If anyone wants more information about this, next weekend, we're doing a webinar called Is My Sensitive Dog Sore with a vet called Dr. Grace Cook. It's all about identifying pain and discomfort. I'm going to give you the sign up in the email follow-up email, it's £10, which is like $12, but it's an absolute steal because if you have a sound sensitive or phobic dog, we'll go through the exact steps you need to go through to figure out what is going on and talk you through like speaking to a vet and etc., all of that stuff. Medical investigations are a part of the healing process, and just like a therapist might help you identify chronic pain and then seek out help in the medical system, that's exactly how we can help. And we have found over 5 years at CCA 6 bullets in dogs. Can you believe that? 6 bullets that we found in dogs. We have found hundreds of cases of arthritis. I say we, obviously, we just prompted, and then a medical team did this investigation. Hundreds of cases of arthritis, hip dysplasia, joint problems, GI issues, allergies, dental issues. I had a sound phobic dog literally in my Feisty Fido class, which I'll talk to you about in a minute. They had horrible sound phobia and sensitivity and stranger issues and all of these other issues. And about 4 weeks into the program, I noticed that he was chewing weirdly when he was eating a hard food. And he wasn't chewing weirdly when he was eating soft food. And so I asked him to go to the dentist, the vet, to look at the dentist. This dog had 5 teeth removed that were horribly rotten. And almost immediately we saw a completely different dog. Just today, I had a message from a client who's also now in my Feisty Fido group, and we'd been working with her dog previously. They'd onboarded fluoxetine, which is an anti-anxiety medication, and it hadn't really helped. And the dog had horrible sound sensitivity and some issues with prey as well, and issues with dogs coming up to them, especially big dogs. And the fluoxetine hadn't worked, and we were really struggling to do the training because, and I'll talk to you about the training in a second, but we were struggling because the dog was so sensitive. And I said to her, we need to try a pain trial because I don't think that this is a behavior issue. I think this is something physical. And I got a message from her today being like, I know it's only been 1 week, but we haven't had a sound reaction all day. She was like, I don't want to count my chickens like before they hatch, and I was like, no, this is exactly what we often see when we start doing these investigations. We get answers. It's brilliant and satisfying. So Patty's saying that you're going down that now, and exactly, and hoping it will impact intractable SA. Yes. So when we're seeing cases that are not responding to behavior treatment, when we're seeing cases that you've been working for multiple years, you've tried different medications, the dog's really struggling, that's often where we're going. Often, actually, we're coming in at the beginning or earlier to kind of avoid waiting that long, because that's what gets me. It was the same with me and Obi and Hira, as like even Hira had arthritis that was diagnosed when he was 5.5. So it took me 5.5 years to get his arthritis diagnosed. It took me 4 vets to get Obi's luxating patella diagnosed. I was told so many times he was fine, and I did not listen. I was like, nope. I am that person who will keep trying until I find the answers. And Chloe's saying that we're in the middle of a gabapentin and Rimadyl trial. Exactly, perfect. So this is exactly why we are doing the pain and the kind of pain trial webinar that is my Sensitive Dog SOAR webinar next week, because so many guardians come to us saying, it's really hard to get this diagnosed. I don't know how to get this diagnosed. Or they'll say like, my vet said that there was, my vet said that there was nothing wrong, etc., all these different things. And I'll put the link to the webinar right now in the chat for you guys, so you can just grab it if you want to. And so that's why we have a vet on staff, Dr. Grace Cook, Dr. Cook, and she's doing alongside myself this webinar all about the pain trial process, because we've seen so many people do pain trials wrong as well. And then they come to us and they're like, well, we did a pain trial and nothing. And I'm like, that's not what that is. Okay. So hopefully we'll see you next week for that. There will be a recording as well that will be available for resale. But we're doing the kind of first early bird tickets at like £10. If anyone wants to join, and if anyone really can't afford it, please do just send me an email and I can figure it out for you, but it's £10, so if you can, that would be awesome. I want to show you guys some training games really quickly, but before I do, I think it's important that I just kind of zoom out for a moment and just pop us onto this slide. So I've talked to you guys about the kind of things that are going to apply to every single dog, the exposure management, the health areas, the anxiety management, thinking about pain and physical discomfort. Where we come in as behavior consultants is kind of helping you go through that process, guiding you through that process, and then figuring out, okay, what are the accompanying therapies that we're going to do to support you as a behavior, from a behavior perspective. And there are so many different types. Whistle stop tour, you might need to work on confinement. We might want to teach your dogs that they should move away from scary things using flight training, which is a very specific formulated protocol that we work through. We often are looking at the activity schedules of you and your dogs on a weekly basis, daily basis, how much time in nature are they getting? What are their walks like? How do you play? How much rest are they getting? How do they eat their food? What are they eating? This is all important. We can work on relaxation on a bed or a mat, or we could work on massage and touch therapies. Sometimes we're thinking about physical body awareness, conditioning to help them feel strong, because sometimes we see sound sensitivity coming alongside just general, like, dogs who struggle with their coordination, dogs who struggle with their body awareness. Sometimes we see sound sensitive dogs like sitting weird and jumping off couches and looking like they're about to break their legs. Sometimes slowing them down and getting them mindfully thinking about movement can be therapeutic, just like yoga can help with folks who have anxiety, right? Or like Pilates or whatever. Mindful movement. Pattern games by Leslie McDivitt are one of our favorite ways to teach dogs specific behaviors, like look at me, follow me, come to me, that kind of stuff. If you Google pattern games for dogs, you can find some probably free stuff online. They are wonderful, wonderful training tools when applied correctly, and they are one of my favorite things that we literally treat every single dog that we work with. We'll work on pattern games. And then, of course, working on the other triggers that the dogs struggle with. You can't really just take out one trigger and work on like just sounds. It's all interlinked. We used to do a course called sound sensitivity, which I have stopped doing because I realized you can't do just work on sound sensitivity. We're always working on it all. And that's why we work with our clients in Feisty Fido. So Feisty Fido is our like group program for sensitive and reactive dogs, and it's 12 weeks long, because honestly that's how long it takes for dogs to really folks to really make significant change with their dogs. And we only run that program a few times a year, so we're only going to do one more round at the end of the year. If anyone wants to join, I can send the link to join the waitlist in the follow-up email. But in that, we get to kind of look at your individual dog and the constellation of different therapies that we could be applying to them, the health stuff, the exposure stuff, and we can week by week help you through the process of changing one thing a week, one thing a week, one thing a week, adding it in, adding in, adding in, until we have this really complex, beautiful training plan. And then that's where we see the really amazing behavior change. There are games we can play with our dogs to decrease sensitivity to noises. People often ask me, can I counter condition my dogs to noises? Can I desensitize my dog to noises? Yes, sometimes. Not all noises, but some you can, especially sensitive noises, like noises around the perimeter of the house. Absolutely. And we have a full protocol for this at CCA. It's like 4 pages long. It's called the Listen to That protocol. And I've written it myself over many years. And the goal of the Listen to That protocol is to reduce sensitivity to specific noises. What you'll be seeing in this video is like a very vague kind of overview of what it might look like, but we essentially will pick specific noises that the dog struggles with, and we teach them to listen to those noises. Often they get food reinforcers, and we start off playing the noises from a laptop or a TV or a phone. And it might look something like this. Hopefully you'll be able to hear this.
Yes.
Did you all hear that knocking noise? And then you kind of, here they got a cookie. Let's try again.
Yes.
Knock, knock, knock.
Good, Emily.
Then they get a cookie. So this is a very rudimentary version of the Listen to That game, where we play the noise. It's playing from the TV speaker.
Yes.
And then they're
Really
getting
cool
a
in
cookie.
here.
You can do this with specific noises, like, for example, the sound of your gate opening. You can record your gate, or you can do it from like noises on YouTube, dogs barking, you know, doorbell, door knocking, etc. The beginning stages of this game, the noise is very predictable. It's right there next to us, but over time it gets harder, and we actually move the triggering noise to be played from the triggering location. So this is Kaya, who's one of our private coaching students, and she's working one-on-one with one of our trainers. And door knocking was a really important part of them to get more comfortable with, especially because eventually they wanted to be able to have guests in the home. And so we were working on it like this. We started off playing the noises from the TV, and now we're playing the noises from a speaker. And that speaker is by the front door. And you can tell because Kaya hears it and she's looking over and she's got these ridiculous ears and she's thinking and processing. And so the nuances of listen to that I'm not going into here create this conversational back and forth between the dog and the human being. Mom just
Yes.
played the knocking noise.
Good
You heard,
job.
saw her ear looking. And then she gets a reinforcer and she's thinking about the noise. What we do is we reframe these scary noises with our dogs in a way that is so not stressful. And sometimes it can take some wizardry to get us there. That was another
Yes.
knock there that she heard.
Good job, Kaya. Good girl.
I'm just going to pause for a second to see what we've got here. Just checking the chat really quickly. I'll bring us back to the video in 2 seconds. Isn't she so cute? Yeah, literally the cutest dog in the world. I'm going to play it again. Sorry, I got distracted by the chat. This is a problem with having an ADHD presenter. All right, let's listen to her watch listen to the final few sounds.
Yes.
That little ear.
Good job.
So this is just one of the kind of therapeutic activities that we can do, or the games we can do to help them reframe noises. It only works for specific noises. I don't do this with like fireworks and things like that. It works very well with noises around the home, barking, knocking, voices, that kind of stuff. And what you'll notice in this video is how calm is this dog?
Yes.
If we think about like, dog
Good
dad
girl.
Lans, who,
Good girl.
famously help dogs work through feelings. It doesn't look anything like that, right? We're talking very, very, very calm, controlled, relaxed dogs who understand what's happening. You might not believe that that dog used to completely lose their mind at any little noise. And we end up with dogs who can perform these tricks essentially of listening to noises to a really, really high level. And this dog, Barley, had a really traumatic experience when he was alone and the neighbors moved in, and the hallway is at the back end of this corridor. So he heard lots of thumping noises, banging noises, and he panicked and subsequently became super reactive to everything around the home. And his mum worked on the listen to that game, levels 1, levels 2, levels 3. She really went through it all over a series of 2 months. And she got to the point where she could have him relaxing and listen to a huge variety of noises.
Yes. Yes.
Hopefully you can hear that knocking.
Yes.
So she's basically recorded a whole bunch of thumping noises. And she's worked individually on different noises and she's putting them all together. And Barley is learning that he can just chill. He can just chill out. He can listen to all these different varieties of noises. And there's nothing stressful about that. There's nothing scary about that. We're literally reframing it for him. You see him going, oh, it's over there.
Yes.
but I don't see any signs of stress. There's that little head down that's like, give me the food, lady. But I don't see any signs of stress really from my end. And that's what we do. That's our job, is to help you guys figure out how to do this in a way that is going to be productive, because there is therapeutic versions of this. And if this is done incorrectly, it can make it worse. Training applied incorrectly can have the opposite effect. Bad therapy is dangerous. And so I want to just make sure that I'm being really clear with folk. I think it's important that, yeah, we just kind of double down on this idea that like the change that you can see is kind of amazing from these dogs. Often it needs a combination of different strategies to see this kind of effect. It's not just one thing. Yes, Emma. So exactly why we wouldn't do this with fireworks is because there's more to the fireworks stimulus than just the noises. It's literally they can feel it. I think the vibrations. I think that there's also like it's coming from the sky. Like I can't put a speaker in the sky. Like I can put a speaker by the window. I can put a speaker out by the front door. I can even put a speaker out on the street, but I can't propel a speaker into the sky and then create the smell of smoke afterwards and the flashing lights. I can't replicate that. It's too complicated. I can talk a little bit more about phobia, like firework phobia in a moment. I just want to show you one more little game because it's cool to see that a dog like Barley or a dog like Kaya, who previously would have been panicking at any version of that noise, at the beginning, we play the noise from a phone or a computer or a TV, and the dogs are panicking at the beginning. And if you're there, please don't just go up and start playing noises and giving them food. Like I said, it can go wrong. It can make it worse. So please avoid that. But I do want to show you one more little game that I play with sound sensitive dogs, and we play with dogs in Feisty Fido and in our private coaching program. And it's called the Smash game. And this is especially useful for dogs who are not only struggling with noises, but there's often a kind of crossover where dogs struggle with noises and also objects moving, falling objects, maybe things like that. And so I'm often playing this game, which is called the Smash game. It's very silly and cute, but this is a very easy level. The goal is that you have an item and the dog has to knock it over. And it starts off being really easy, just knocking over a plastic cup on a fluffy rug floor.
Good.
It's making a little thump, thump, thump noise, but nothing significant.
Good.
But you'll notice I start to make it harder.
Good.
I'm making it fall farther.
Good.
And now it's tumbling down. It's not just falling.
Yeah.
Hero was the sort of dog who would panic if a bag slipped, So this was
Yay! That was much noisier. Get it.
He's so cute. I got handle.
Woo! Yeah. Let's try it this way.
This one's on a plate. That's hard.
Yes, I know plate noises are so scary.
So plate noise is one of the noises that Hero struggles with, like clinking.
Yeah! Woo! You're so smart.
So I'm not telling him to do anything. It's all offered, and it has to be. If we want it to be maximally therapeutic, it has to be offered behavior, not behavior pushed out of them.
Well done, Papa.
So cute. I love that man. So I think he's the cutest dog in the world. I'm just obsessed with him. Thank you, Paddy. I'm glad you like this. It's fun because he was such the sort of dog who struggled with like a sudden start. He struggled with like like little noises, like a chink of a spoon on a cup. So I would give him my cereal, and if I left my spoon in it, he'd be too scared to drink the like milk at the bottom. He'd wait until I took it out. And these days he'll like knock the bowl over, he'll pull the spoon out, he doesn't give a crap. But at the beginning, it really was hard for him. And Tina, you've hit the nail on the head. They are controlling the game. They are controlling everything that we do. They control most of the things that we do. And that's a very specific way that we do therapy. It's learner-centered, because it actually gets us to our end result faster that way. So yeah, you're absolutely 100% right. It is absolutely them controlling the game. You've absolutely hit the nail on the head there. I have a large plastic box with Arlo gets. Nice. Crinkly noises. Nice, Emma, with the crinkly noises. That's good. So some dogs will struggle even with like boxes and paper. For other dogs, you know, we can play the smash game, and the smash game is something that we target and specifically create for each client based off of what their dog struggles with. So for Hira, I started with plastic, and then I added in some like ceramic noises and some metallic noises, and we can very specifically make it harder to build their skills and to build their confidence. It's not about getting them to do the thing, it's about like building that excitement and that confidence. And I literally watched him drink like the remainder of cereal with the spoon in the other day, and I almost went, oh, take the spoon out, but then I saw him go in and I was like, oh, I know, okay, oh yeah, he's good, you got this, you're fine, okay, cool. And the spoon like clattered over the bowl onto the floor, and he didn't even skip a beat. Like usually he would have gone like, ugh, and like run away, but that didn't even happen. And we see it happening time and time and time again with our clients. These like integrative changes can make a significant difference to them. So let me just real quick pop this back on the screen. So yeah, so in these videos, in the slideshow, you can see these videos, you can click through and watch them. And I do have little notes here to remind everyone that incorrect application can increase sensitivity to sounds. It can also decrease the dog's eating behavior, meaning that it can make your dog, it can kind of affect the, if you're using food as a reinforcer, it can make the food poison the food. And I did that with Hira at the beginning. At the beginning, when I tried to do these sorts of things with him, I did it incorrectly, and I made his sound sensitivity worse. And I also, it ended up with him not eating because he associated the food with the noises. When I tell you I made all the mistakes, I made all the mistakes, and it's normal and it's fine and we can fix it. That's what's important. There was a point where Hero wouldn't eat anything from my hand. He wouldn't eat steak from my hand because he was so unsure about everything. And these days he eats kibble outside. You know, there's an amazing amount of work that we can do. And these are just two of the games that we have developed at CCA. And I'm sure other folks have their own versions of this, but we have our own kind of protocols that we use. And that we work on in our program. I think I just want to just remind everyone that we have Feisty Fido. If you're interested in working with us, that starts in the fall. In the fall. So if you'll have the sign up link in the email if you're interested, or you can just email info@calmcanine.academy.com or me and be like, I want to make sure I get a spot. We also do offer private coaching, one-on-one coaching, and we have a 15% sale off our initial consultation. The last thing I guess that I wanted to just make sure that everybody knows before we do our kind of Q&A and jump into the second half is this is the CCA webinar library. If you haven't been here already, it lives under the free training section of our website, webinar library, and we have tons and tons and tons of free resources. So if you struggle with other challenges, if your dog's between under 3 years old and adolescence, if you're struggling with reactivity, separation anxiety, puppy training, we have our an old sound sensitivity webinar from last year where you've learned everything in this one. You don't have to go back and watch this. Resource guarding, pain and behavior is a great free option for dogs struggling potentially with that. So there's loads of free stuff for you guys, and I just wanted you finished, so it's probably time for us to hang out now. Thank you guys so much. All right, my loves, I think I've seen everybody. I see little Giddy as well. All right, babes, I'll see you soon. I'll send you everything through in like the day after tomorrow. Oh yes, wait, do you want to come say hi? Come say hi. Oh my goodness, this is my Bablu. He says hello. You've been sleeping this whole time. You've been so good. I love you. All right, my loves, I'll see you soon. Hira's waking up now too. Bye everyone.